turned the steering wheel and the back end of the car fishtailed out and hit a huge boulder, moved the boulder, flipped over, and as you can see in this picture, it landed on its top. When I went through the windshield, I knew I was going to hit the ground and die. And I called out, "Oh my God, help me." And at that moment, an angel, he came down and took me in an upward direction, which I call heaven. That was my soul that went over. And if I can say one thing about the other side, the main theme is its love and oneness. And if you remove the judgment, then you have the capacity for love, and love will lead to peace.
Well, hello, Nicole Kerr. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Oh, Brad, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm actually doing really well today. I'm grounded and ready to go with the show.
Oh, well, good. I am really looking forward to this conversation. To me, it really feels like you're near that experience, change your whole perspective on life and death, of course, and your purpose here, in your current life. And, this ultimately led to you becoming award-winning health and wellness expert, which is an interesting twist in your life that we're going to hear about. And of course, a speaker and really the author of your book, You Are Deathless. And, that is such a great title because this is all about fear, and everything in life that's about fear is about fear of death most of the times, right? And it's like you're telling us we don't need to fear that. And that is based on this wonderful experience. Well, I guess it's pretty wonderful in the end. It was pretty horrific as you had it. But and that's what everyone is here to hear about. And we have so many beautiful topics. I got to tell you, reading the book for me was a massive page turner. It was so emotional as I flipped. This has to become a movie. If I had connections into the movie making business, I would give them this book and I would go sit, in the middle of the theater and just bring my Kleenex with me, of course. But it's a fantastic story and the audience is really going to enjoy it. Don't wait for the movie because you're going to hear the story today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. It's been my whole adult life has been my journey, and it's not just about the NDE, but the actual healing journey that I have been on. And that is really what has been a lot of times grueling and painful, but when you break through with a lot of these preconceived belief systems that really aren't true anymore, you really do become free on so many realms, and you get free of the fear, not only of death, but of so many things that keeps you in a constricted, fearful, low vibrational state.
Well, it's I just went through the whole story and I just thought it was so amazing. I have so many questions to pull out the story, but I know you know how to tell the story yourself. And I know you go back into, religion when you were in Mississippi and that influence, and then, your father, and then 19, and then the Air Force, and so on and so on. I don't want to give it all away, but I just love it. So I'll be sitting on the edge of my seat while you tell it, and I might be jumping in a time or two with some extra fun questions.
Absolutely. Jump in whenever and whatever.
Well, feel free to go ahead and take it away to when the story begins.
Okay, so we're going to start when I was age 19, and I was a second-year student at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Now, this is at a time in the early 80s when women had just been admitted to the Air Force, to the service academies. So I was there because I am a people pleaser, a parent pleaser, and it's an identity that I grew up with, and it served me growing up, but I kept it into my adulthood, and it really started to turn on me then, but I had no clue about any of this, identities or anything like this back at 19 years old. But I went into the military to please my father. He was a graduate of the academy. He went into the Marine Corps. And he felt like if I followed in his footsteps, it would really make me a woman that he said few would rival. That was his exact words. So I did everything. I was a good girl growing up. I did everything my parents told me to do. I never caused them any angst. My brother did, but I didn't. And I was a good girl. I did everything by the book. What was asked of me, I did. And I learned to excel and perform well. So I thought, okay, I'll apply to the academy. And when my high school principal called me in and said, Representative Dowdy is on the phone with you, he has something to tell you, I was like, oh my God. He said, congratulations, Nicole, you've been accepted into the class of 86 at the U.S. Air Force Academy. And literally, I think I was just like in such a state of shock and like, now I got to go. It's one thing to do all the test and to, get all that application process. It's a really arduous, rigorous process to get accepted into these academies. And so I did all of that, and I just thought, oh, no, I'm not going to get accepted, and then I did, and I'm like, uh-oh, because in our family, failure is not an option. When you sign up for something, if something as prestigious as this, you got to go. It doesn't matter if you're scared or if you don't want to do it. That doesn't matter at this point. So I went, and my first year out there, I will tell you, it was hell. I wanted to quit so many times, but I couldn't. The shame and the disappointment that would occur with my father. I don't think I can understand why there's such a high suicide rate in Japan, because of the shame. If you do not meet a certain expectation or accomplish this goal, you're nothing, because your whole identity is tied up in that performance or in that achievement or in that, being a female cadet at a service academy. So I wanted to get out but couldn't. So when my sophomore year rolled around, I endured a lot of abuse there. I will tell you, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. And unfortunately, in the military today, there's a lot of that still going on, especially the sexual abuse. 40 years later, it is still epidemic in the militaries, which is just so sad on so many levels. But I started my sophomore year, and we went and had a squadron get together. And as I was leaving that squadron get together, a senior cadet, I asked him for a ride back. We were the last to leave this event, and I didn't have another way to get back. So I said, hey, do you mind if I catch a ride with you? And he's like, nah. Now, there had been beer served at this game, or at this event, which in and of itself was against Air Force regulations, because you're not supposed to be providing liquor to underage cadets, and you're not supposed to serve liquor without an officer being present. So they were already breaking rules there. But I get in this car, and it's a 1965 Corvette convertible, and I'm like, wow, this is a really cool car, and I was just going to have fun for once in my life. I grew up in a very conservative, very controlled environment. I never went on a date in high school. My dad said there was no need to date. There'd be time for that later. So I never went to a prom or anything like that. And now I'm going to school with 4,000 guys. And my dad's rules were no drinking, no smoking, and no dating cadets. Okay, that's what you go to college for, right, Brad? To experience life, to rebel a little bit. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to have some fun and go back, with this guy. So we get in the car to leave, and he wants to stop at a bar and have a couple of beers. Well, my dad was like, no drinking, but I'm like, I can have a beer, So I had 2 beers and a cigarette, okay? Here I'm breaking the rules big time. And then we get back in the car, and I remember the bartender asking the driver if he was okay to drive, and he said he was. So we get back in the car, and I am very anxious because we have a curfew at the academy. You have to be back in by 7:35, and I know it's getting close to 7:20 or so, and he's going to have to really speed to get back to the academy on time. And he wants to stop and watch the sunset. And I'm like, oh my God, really? And so I didn't know he had a whole agenda. He wanted to make out. He really wanted to have sex before we went back. And I am so naive, not having been on a date. And I'm sitting here going, I am in over my head with this guy. And then the next thing I know, we leave the area that we were watching the sunset, because I said, no, we got to get back. And the next thing I know, I wake up the next day and I'm in the ICU at Penrose Community Hospital. And to fill in what happened between 7:35 p.m. on Sunday night and roughly another 12 hours later on Monday morning, I have the paramedics report. I have the emergency services vehicles report. I have the district attorney's report. I've gone back 25 years later and interviewed my doctor, the EMT, and the nurse. I put all of this in my book. I have my memory come back, Brad, 19 years later. That was really key for me to remember exactly what happened the moment of the crash. And so what I can tell you now is he was speeding. He made a sexual pass at me, and I said no. He got very angry with me, and he turned the steering wheel, and the back end of the car fishtailed out and hit a huge boulder, moved the boulder, flipped over, and as you can see in this picture, it landed on its top. The car did not have seatbelts, thank God, because we were both ejected out of the car. The picture on your left, as you can see, is what it looked like in the impound lot, and that is the driver's side. So that would have been my side. So what I now know happened is I flew, but my feet, I could never figure out how I got the injuries I did until my memory came back. You know how you're in a convertible and you put one foot up on the dashboard and then you cross the other one over and you're just kind of laying back, chilling. That's what I had done. And so when the impact happened, I went butt up through the windshield. I cut my left foot off. I cut a 4th-degree laceration in between my leg, my anal and sphincter muscle. I severed my right wrist. And so I went through the windshield up into the air. And at that moment, I got stuck in my memory. So I went to this is 19 years later. So I went to see my chiropractor and he said, "Oh, Nicole, these are repressed memories. Your accident, your body feels safe enough. So it's now revealing what the accident was." So I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. Why 19 years later? Why couldn't this have happened earlier?" And he said, "Well, your body just didn't feel safe and you didn't have the resources to actually deal with this traumatic memory."
You told the story in a way at first where you said he was driving fast up the road and he turned the wheel, and the next thing you knew, you woke up,
Yeah.
in the hospital in terrible shape. Well, that's quite a chunk that's missing there, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you didn't, people told you about what happened. You saw photos and so forth, but you had no actual memory of what was going on at that point, right? Until
Correct.
you said many, many years later. So for many years, you just went based on hearsay, and then you were recovering and so forth, and therapy and physical therapy, and you just had no real recollection of exactly what happened. Is that right?
Except for bright white lights. That is the only thing that I did remember the entire 19 years. But I thought they were the operating room lights. I thought somehow I must have awoken and I saw the lights from the operating room. And I remember asking my surgeon a couple of years later, I said, "Could I have seen the lights from the OR?" And she said, "Absolutely not, Nicole." She said, "You were completely unconscious." She said, "You would not have seen that." She said, "I had been with you all 4 months and you had several near-death experiences." And she said, "I had never seen that happen and I have never believed that it happened until you came to me as a patient." And she said, "You have experienced, you crossed over, you were pronounced dead at the scene." Okay, so that's what I will tell you now is I didn't know that I had been pronounced dead. I was like, whoa, and when you get that and you see that the EMT was, or the paramedic was like, "Yes, we didn't get there until 10 to 13 minutes after the call." The bystanders they heard the crash, they came out, they looked at you, they could not get any vitals, they ran back in the house and got a blanket and covered you up, and then looked at the other guy who was the driver, and he was conscious, and he was except for some injuries on his back, he was fine. And so you were just covered up with a blanket for that whole 10 to 13 minutes. And when John Hartling, who I call one of my angels, he took the blanket off of me and could not get any vitals on me either. Okay, none. So he finally did something called a sternal knuckle press, which if you're in the healthcare industry, that's designed to elicit pain in the body, and it is painful. And the only sign of life he could get out of me was my right pupil dilated. Now, have you heard of that phrase, "Our eyes are the window to our soul"?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, let me tell you, there's a reason why we say that. At that moment, I was on the other side. And when he did that pain stimulus, my soul, which I'd already found out that I was going to have to come back down, okay? I didn't want to come back into that body, but my soul came back in through my eye. It has to come in through an opening in your physical body. And at that moment, he was able to get a blood pressure reading over 60 over 0 on me. Now, normal is 120 over 80, so we're still talking in and out of death at 60 over 0, okay?
And this is still the NDE you're talking about. You don't even know it happened at this
No,
point.
no,
So later on, you figured this out, and you're kind of putting the pieces back together. But at this point,
I'm
you
out.
don't know what happened. But when he told you that he got that dilation in the pupil, then you remembered, and it connected it back together. Wow.
Yeah. So it is, your soul is powerful. That's that your breath is what is your life force energy. Okay, that is what is keeping you living, and that is what leaves you. So when I went through the windshield, this is a really cool part. I had an angel. I said, "Oh my God, I knew I was going to die. I knew I was going to hit the ground and die." And I called out, "Oh my God, help me." And at that moment, an angel, and in the book, I call him Casper the Friendly Ghost, because I just didn't have an identity to go with him, except that it was a male. He was in his early 30s. And he came down and took me in an upward direction, which I call heaven, okay, or the other side, if you want to call it that. And that was my soul that went over. I could look down from up there and see my body in a ditch, which is where it wound up. And I could see what I was wearing. I had a turquoise Azad on shirt. I had khaki shorts on. I could see my foot was mangled and hanging off. I could see my body, and I was like, I do not want to get back in that body. That is going to be a body filled with a lot of pain and suffering and who knows what, and I don't want to get back in it. So I was like, whew, glad I'm out of it. So on the other side, this angel, and I don't know how this happens, but you communicate over there through telepathy and vibration, okay? I heard two angels next to me. They were saying that they wanted us to ask for help, and us meaning humans down here on earth, that they are there to help us, but we have to ask them for help. They are not going to intervene unless they're asked. And that's because we have something called free will that we get to choose. And so they're not going to intervene unless it is an emergency, like it was in my situation. It was life or death. The angel came in and he took me to the other side. And so I'm over there on the other side, and let me tell you, it is beyond brilliance, okay? It is a place where, okay, you don't have your body. You're in kind of this translucent form, really like Casper, honestly. And you have eyes. I remembered this later. You have eyes. Our physical eyes can only see about maybe what's in front of us and go out maybe 40 degrees, okay? But when you're on the other side, your eyes can see all 360 and the future all at the same time. It's so cool, it really is. And music, it's like you can take your 7 top songs that you love and you put them all together in a soundtrack, and you get the vibration of all of the music that you love the most coming at you all at the same time. It's just unbelievable. And their colors, let me tell you about the colors on the other side. There are more colors than that which is in the Crayola color box, even the big box, okay? There are just so many more brilliant colors in the world. And so I think it's an amazing place where you don't have any pain. There is no judgment. It's just beautiful, and it's brilliant, and it's glorious, and it's radiant, and it's positive. There's nothing negative on the other side. There's no fear. There's none of these good, bad. In fact, I will tell you right now, good and bad are earth terms. We created them on earth, and we use them on earth in order to evaluate one another, okay, and ourselves. But when you're on the other side, bad does not even exist. So there's no dichotomy. There's no duality there to even have a reference to say something is bad. It's all beyond goodness.
And is that because the reference of bad is actually a judgment, right?
That's exactly
And if there's
right.
no Yeah, and if there's no judgment, how could there be good or bad, right? So everything is what it is, and especially down here in this physical manifestation, we're having these experiences for purposes of having these experiences. And, one of the other things you said is while you were there, the angels tried to tell you, listen, people need to ask for help because they have free will and we're not going to disturb that. So they need to ask. So are you asking for help more often now? Are you helping other people do the same?
Absolutely. And I want everyone to know they have at least one guardian angel. I know there are angels and there's spirit guides, there's deceased loved ones. There's a whole realm on the other side, the spiritual realm, that is here to support us on earth. But we have to ask for help. It's like any relationship. It's not just a pray one off, oh, help me with this because somebody's in a crisis or someone's in the hospital. It's something, I tell you, as small as a parking space in a shopping mall or whatever, you can ask for help with that. And every time I ask, without fail, I get a parking spot, or I get the help. I get the answer that is for my highest and greatest good. And I think that's the other thing. We have to detach from thinking we know the outcome of how something should be or ought to be. And we don't know really what is the highest and greatest good for either, most of the time, ourselves or for a loved one. I do believe in prayer. Prayer is a form of energy, and we all are energetic beings. That is what our soul is, that breath is. That is energy that continues to carry on long after this physical body decays. So, as energetic beings, if we could look at the word love and not just see it as an emotion, but as an energy, I think it would help a lot of us understand what we feel and what we are and how we have things attracted to us. And animals, to me, show us that relationship with unconditional love the best. And I will tell you another thing, your pets will be there on the other side. You will, because I think a lot of people, honestly, in this day and age, Brad, their relationships with their pets are almost more important than some of the relationships with other human beings. They're so happy to see us when we come home from our day, and they just seem to intuitively know what we need. And so of course their little spirits and souls are going to go over to the other side, because the creator, whatever you want to call God, source, divine intelligence, why wouldn't it allow these little beings, our fur friends and, feathered friends, why wouldn't it allow them to be on the other side to bring us joy there if they're bringing us joy here?
Yeah, and I think that the pets are an example of unconditional love because they don't judge you. Like when you walk in the door, they're just happy to see you again. And right, so that's like a little smattering of unconditional love that we have here, and then they're there over there waiting for you as well.
Yeah, and they don't remember what you did to them last week or 2 years ago, and they're holding that against you. They're just like, I want my treats.
Well, that's true. Unconditional love is they don't judge you, but if they do have a bad experience with an owner over and over again, they'll probably try to just stay away from that owner. Not judging them, just keeping their distance if they need to. And let's hope there's not a lot of that in the world. So now we're talking about, your book again is like You Are Deathless. Okay. So you came up with this title, it sounds, based on that experience that you're having over there. So more about now, do you see, I know your story here. Do you want to go over the 19 years of various things before you actually remember the NDE, or you want to go back into the NDE and fill the rest of that story?
Let me just fill in the rest of that NDE, because I will tell you, during the 19 years without my memory, I was really lost. Okay. I was a real lost soul because I couldn't connect to really what happened. I knew something happened, but I could not understand why I wasn't really believing in the God that I was raised with, and why I just was why I was so depressed, why I was having massive anxiety, why I could go to every single denominational church you can imagine and didn't feel a connection to any of it. And there was always a reason why I just couldn't understand it until my memory came back. But back to the NDE, and I know I'm going a long way around this, but there is a lot of pieces to this. When my memory came back, and I did remember going over to the other side, they did tell me, my angel did tell me that, Nicole, you're going to have to go back into your body. I did not get a choice. A lot of times you will hear with NDE people, they do get a choice. So whether or not they want to stay on the other side or come back, I was told I was to come back. And my mission, I was given it directly by Spirit. And they said that you're to tell people not to be afraid of death. And I'm like, oh, that's not a big topic at all, is it? It just happens to be the one that most people are in denial with, that it's going to happen to them. But it is the only thing universally that's going to happen to every single person on this planet. It used to be taxes and death. Now it's just you are going to die. And my hope is that we can change the narrative around death. Instead of it being about doom and gloom and depression and loss and grief that keeps you stuck for, some people just decades, that we can change that to a conversation where it is of beauty and love. And yes, the human state, our three-dimensional state, there is still suffering. Okay, we have emotions, and we have to embody that human part of us. There's still suffering and grief and pain and loss that we have to compassionately hold and heal. But when you look at the bigger cosmic context of death, and the benevolence of it, and that how just extraordinary it is on the other side. And we really go back home. That when we know this and we can keep that top of mind, then we're able to, it helps us to live and die a more graceful, peaceful passing, and we can help others with their transition as well.
Very nice. So in that they gave you the good news. You got to go back.
Except it wasn't good news because I was back to an infant state. Okay. You guys, I mean, I had to have a colostomy. I didn't even know what a colostomy was. And I'm going, I have never had sex with a guy. And now I can't even stand to look at my body, So I had massive issues with body image, and I developed an eating disorder. The doctor, before I was in the hospital 4 months. I went through 6 major operations. I went through a code blue where they actually pronounced me dead again in an operation because I left again. I was trying to find that white light. I did not want to be in that body. And then I had a third near death where my lungs filled up with fluid and I was suffocating. And I just left again and said, I don't want to be in this body. And every time my angel came and got me and said, you're back in your body again. So I did try to go back several times. I have a real calling this time around to help with this mission that I was given. But I think, it's important that people understand when you go through something like I did, and about 10% of the Americans actually have had an NDE. So it's not as uncommon as you might think, but you actually go through a spiritual transformative experience. You go from an NDE to this. So many things about you change, okay? You have to go through and discard all the limiting beliefs that you had been born with and that you had acquired over most of your lifetime. And God was the first one I had to tackle because the God that I was raised with, which was Southern Baptist and Lutheran in Mississippi, that presented me with a God that was dual, that the God was loving and it was protective, and yet there were a set of rules, and if you disobeyed those rules, then you were going to a place called hell. And I can tell you right now, from my experience on the other side, there is no hell. Hell no, there's no hell. In terms of when you die, okay? Yes, there is, in my opinion, hell on earth when you're in a war, like the Ukrainian war, the people that are being killed, and all the innocent bystanders that are killed and maimed, and all the soldiers, not having food or water or just basic survival, your basics in surviving, not to be able to know that you can depend on that is living in hell. Being in an addiction that consumes your life and you can't get out of it, that is living in hell. So those are my interpretations of what hell on earth really is like. But in terms of a place that was created where there's Lucifer and, flames, and you're going to be eternally, burning in hell and separated from your family and from God. No, that's a man-made idea designed to keep you in fear. And as we can see now in our country, if you're in fear, you're operating when you're in fear from this part of your brain called your amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze part, okay? When you're operating back here instead of up here, you're in what we call the sympathetic mode. So you're not going to make decisions that have clarity to them. You're going to sabotage yourself when you make decisions out of here and keep yourself in a perpetual state of reoccurring patterns. You have to get to this prefrontal cortex and get in parasympathetic in order to have clarity to understand, okay, I can understand that my decision, if I make it this way or that way, this one's going to be the better way. But when you're making it out of this reactionary stress part of your brain, it's never going to be for your highest and greatest good. And so many of us are operating in this fear part 24/7 and not able to get to this rest and digest part of the parasympathetic brain.
Right. And now the question is, we have this free will we mentioned a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the free will to keep ourselves out of fear? Do we fall into a trap? And this might be a good opportunity to do a little character development with your parents right here and talk about their influence.
Okay, so of course, the biggest role models in any of our lives are going to be our parents, okay? And so I grew up with a very strict father, Marine Corps, yes sir, no excuse sir. And he knew best for us. And he made that very clear that I know better for you than you know for yourself. So you better listen to me. And if not, we got whipped as kids, okay? And I thought everybody got whipped if they got, in trouble. Not so, I later find out. My mother was an immigrant from Kiev, Ukraine. She had gone through World War II and came over here on the last boat out of Germany with her family, and they were indentured servants, okay, to a church in Holly Springs, Mississippi, a Lutheran church, and they had to work in a cotton field for an entire year to work off the payment to get them over here. So she lost her father in that. The Russians took him and killed him. She lost her grandmother in the Allied bombings in 81 years ago, actually, when those bombings happened to free the Allied forces captured Germany. So, and then she lived in a displaced person camp for 6 years. So my mother had a lot of trauma in her childhood. And what I will tell you, if your parents don't deal with their own trauma, they have no compassion and no empathy and sympathy for you and the trauma that you're going through. And I really want to say that it's important that each generation needs to heal their own trauma, or else they perpetrate that on to the next generation. So for those of you that do have trauma, please get some help with it and get to the bottom and the root of it and heal those trauma wounds so that you don't pass them off to your children, because it really is a generational issue that has to be addressed. So my parents were very conservative, very religious. We had to go to 2 churches every Sunday, okay? I mean, I went to so much church growing up. I had to go to Bible drill, all this kind of stuff. I really thought that if I prayed hard enough that God would give me the right answer. And what I realized that is like a vending machine concept of God, where if you just put in the right behavior, right, and punch the Coca-Cola button, you should get a Coke out. But what happens, Brad, when you put in all the right behaviors and you're doing the right thing, you're confessing, you're saying your prayers, you're living by the 10 Commandments and all the other rules that the other churches put on you, but you get a Mountain Dew or you don't get anything out of the machine. What happens then?
What happens then? Well, so here's the deal. It's like you have expectations, don't you?
Yes.
But when expectations aren't met, you might have frustrations and so forth. And maybe you can replace the expectations with an intention, with some enthusiasm, and then realize the universe is going to take you in the direction that you really need to go regardless. And so just be happy, equanimity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's really hard as a 19-year-old to go, oh boy, let me look at this whole God concept and think about this again and see really, is following these rules and me punching the Coca-Cola machine and not getting it, what's really going on there, So it has been, unfortunately, even to this day, my parents believe the only way to get to God is through Jesus. And what I experienced on the other side was that none of us need anything external to get to God. God is within each and every one of us, okay? This eternal flame of God is constantly in us. So you don't need a conduit to get to God because we are God. And that is, according to my family, I'm blasphemous by saying that. I mean, that's how rightly religious they still are. So unfortunately, my parents and I don't have a relationship at all with my father anymore. And it was by his choosing, actually. And he could never understand. He has blamed me for the car crash, even though I wasn't the driver, and the state of Colorado charged the guy. He was blatantly drunk and caused the crash. But because I disobeyed my father, and I disobeyed my father in heaven, meaning God, then I, quote, deserved what I got. And he has never retracted that in 41 years. They're both still alive. And it has taken me a lot of therapy. I will just be honest with your audience. I've gone to a lot of different modalities with all kinds of different therapy because I was taught that family is everything and that you could always depend on family and you should be able to work out all these differences. But to be blamed for something that I didn't do and then to tell me that I disappointed my father, that's what I was trying to avoid by staying at the academy. And instead it all blew up. But my soul knew what it was doing, and this was the only way to get me out of the academy, what I would call saving face. Now I have a medical discharge, and I will say today now, based on my injuries, 100% disabled veteran, and I have a real heart calling for helping veterans, and it really is sad for me to see what's happening with the VA system right now, presently, because so many people. Do you know? Let me just aside here. I just got tested for sleep apnea. With the VA, I have to wait 12 months to get tested and assessed, and get a machine. 12-month wait to see a sleep doctor. So you're having so many veterans that are just dying because they're not getting the treatment and the assessment that they need in a timely manner. So it's unconscionable to me to think that we can send all these people to fight, and they choose to fight and defend our freedom, and we can't even do something as basic as get them a timely appointment, But that's a whole nother show maybe for you, Brad. But it's just, it was a horrible way to get out of something. I wish back then I would have had my voice and I could have said, this is not for me. This is, learning to kill people is not what I signed up for. And my soul knew it immediately in boot camp. It knew that this was the wrong place for me. I just couldn't align with it and speak my truth and deal with the consequential fallout with my family, especially my dad.
Well, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
You were under the self-imposed pressure that you put on yourself due to your father's expectations and your desire to please him. And so that's a lot of influence. And boy, it's interesting how it's going right to the end of his life, sort of with that stance. I would ask you, knowing what you know about going to the other side, what experience do you think he'll have one day when he goes to the other side?
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, everyone's going to have a life review. That is a lesson, one of the 10 indie lessons that I talk about in my book. The last one is every one of us is going to have a life review where everything that we have said, done, and thought during our physical life, how it's impacted ourselves, others, and the world. So it's not a judgment, but you will be put in the opposite of position of receiving everything you did to someone else. And I will tell you that you're going to feel that, and you're going to feel the impact that your words had, your actions had on other people. So we need to be mindful right now of what we're saying and doing and thinking, and hold it in the highest vibration possible. Do those things which are kind and loving towards others, because you're going to have to reflect and answer for that when you're on the other side. So he's going to have a life review, and he's going to see how much it hurt me and how much I tried to get him to forgive and to just quit holding the blame. And he has to be right about everything. So people who are narcissistic, it's going to be it's not going to be a pleasant review. And people, this is the same thing if harming animals, this is going to show up in your life review. Harming Mother Earth, things you did that hurt and harmed other people. And the good stuff is going to show up as well. But you can mitigate that life review by choosing now to say, do, and think higher, more evolved, loving kindness type of thoughts, words, and deeds. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, totally. And when you think about it, we are potentially here in these physical manifestations, as brief as it is, to have experiences we couldn't have on the other side.
Right.
Since there is
Right.
no fear and it's all unconditional love and so on. So we couldn't really learn from experiences in that other side space. We have to come here for that. And by the way, if you hadn't had that experience with your father and the various other experiences you had, you wouldn't have grown to the level you have now and had the NDs and are helping so many people now either. So everything is as it is for a reason sometimes. And so we find out more about ourselves as we go through life and ask these questions and come to terms and so forth. And it's great when someone has an NDE and they pop over to the other side and then they come back and they give us some insight. We don't have to guess and get it wrong entirely. We have wonderful insight. So thanks for sharing that. Now, I've got a special segment here called Heart's First Whisper. So this is where I ask you a series of questions you've never seen before, and you let your heart do the answering. It's just like
Okay.
question, heart pours out an answer. How
Okay.
do you feel about that?
Love it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Here we go. First one. What does being deathless mean to you now, and how has it changed the way you live?
Oh my goodness. I don't fear death anymore. Growing up, I always was in fear that I was going to go to hell because I did something bad, or I was bad. So I was always scared that I wasn't good enough to go to heaven and be with God and my family. So now it's changed the way I live because I'm free of that fear. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that when I die, my soul is going to leave me and my soul lives on. Okay, so I don't really totally die. That part of me that comes back again and again and incarnates, that soul part of me lives on forever. It's eternal. And that is so comforting.
So that's great because, that's why I love, first of all, your entire book, but certainly the title, being deathless, because it's such a negative term when it's a transition that we have onto where we came from. And the fact is if that's where we came from and we chose to have a temporary physical manifestation here and then go back there, it isn't a death, it's a returning. It's a
That's right.
returning home, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Ram Dass has a great saying that he uses all the time, which was, we're all just walking each other home.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love Ram Dass. Yes, yes, that is. And John Lennon said about death, it's just like getting out of one car and getting into another.
There you go.
Yeah,
A fancier
yeah,
car, higher,
yeah,
higher
yeah.
resolution. Yeah. Number two, how would your life be different if you had remembered the whole NDE experience as you woke up in the hospital at 19 years old?
Well, the first thing I would tell you immediately is I forgot to tell you that when my parents, the doctor said Nicole needs to see a psychiatrist. This was right after I got discharged out of the hospital. My mother looked at the doctor and said, Jesus is our psychiatrist. Nicole's going to be just fine. And I have to tell your audience, Brad, Jesus never came down and sat on the sofa. As much as I love Jesus, he never did that and said, Nicole, let's talk about your trauma and some of these wounds and why you are filled with self-hatred and how you blame yourself for this. And so what happened, because if you don't heal these trauma wounds, your body has a way of an unhealthy adaptation to it. And what happened for me is I developed an eating disorder. And back in the 80s, it was compulsive overeating. Today it's known as binge eating disorder. And that plagued me. And I'm going to say plagued because any of your audience who has dealt with any spectrum on the eating disorder knows what a horrific disease eating disorders are and how shame-based they are and how you want it to be secretive. And just so much goes into that particular disease. And I lived with that for 20 years until my memory came back. Once my memory came back, I could understand I was afraid of men's anger. I could understand that I did nothing to cause this crash. And I was able to heal from that eating disorder within a year of my memory coming back. So for 20 years, I stuffed food in my mouth and I felt so guilty and so bad about myself. I couldn't love myself. I couldn't love this body that was so mangled. So how would I have been different? Oh, I wouldn't have had to deal with an eating disorder. But then I wouldn't have gone into nutrition because I went into nutrition thinking I could fix myself. Okay, so I'm now a registered dietitian and I worked with eating disorders for a number of years and have such compassion and such empathy and sympathy for men and women both that deal with, disordered eating and using food to cope with your emotions and how difficult that the recovery period is on that because it's the only addiction that you actually have to eat in order to live. The rest of them, you can just stop them, but you can't with food. And especially in our society with the media and social pressures for an ideal thinness of being labeled beauty, there's so much pressure on women in particular to conform to a certain body image that is unrealistic. And it does such a number on so many women and men for so long that they're consumed with their body image, calories, food, what to eat, what not to eat, all of that kind of stuff, having to wear a certain size. So My life would be very different if I hadn't spent 20 years consumed with an eating disorder.
So the 20-year delay, that's the 20
Mhm.
years, really sent you down an interesting path of gaining tons of knowledge and actually helping a lot of people in that area before you had the awakening that took you off onto even another avenue. So
Exactly.
that sounds amazing. Now, number three, do you believe in soul agreements? Was the NDE and the rest of your life pre-planned?
Okay, so this is my take on it. Okay, I believe in soul agreements. I believe that we agree before we come in that we're signing up for certain lessons to learn. So we have soul agreements, and then we're on a soul path, our life, and the path can change, and the agreement can change based on something that happened. So if I could have had my voice and the courage to say, I don't want to go to the academy, I would like to go to Mississippi State University, or somewhere like that, that would have changed the whole thing. But instead, I put myself in a place where my soul was like, this is not where you belong. So the only way, because I couldn't quit and because I hadn't failed out or gotten kicked out somehow, I was just going on living each day in fear. Then the universe intervened. And this is what is really cool is right after I wrote the book, I was sitting writing one day and I smelled cigar smoke. And I was like, nobody in my house smokes cigars. And then I heard Nicole, and I'm looking around going, who is that? And he said, this is your grandfather on on your dad's side. This is James. And he said, I have to tell you, I'm your angel. And I'm like, what? He said, yes. He said, I could see what pain you were in and the abuse you were going through and how you were stuck. You could not get yourself out of it. So I helped orchestrate this, and I'm the one that got you from the car crash and took you over to the other side. And he said, I will stay with you until, and you have a mission. He said, I'm going to be one of your angels that is going to surround you the rest of your life until you depart this planet for good. And he's still with me, and he still comes in and talks to me. And he said, I was there during the surgery where you had code blue and they lost you on the operating room table and went and they called a time of death. I mean, it was like, tell the parents that she's gone. The surgical nurse did that. And then 2 minutes later, my heart starts up again. Brett, how do you explain this? It's not me. I can't will myself to come back in my body on that first time or to get my heart starting again, or any of these other extraordinary measures that happen. They're miracles, certainly, but they're mystical and they're unexplainable. And it's a force greater than myself and around here that's intervening, a divine intervention. And it's powerful. It is extremely powerful. So that I don't think that NDE was pre-planned, but something had to get me out of the academy, and it had to be at such a level that I could not go back, and that would save face with my father.
Well, that was a pretty severe move, the car crash, but it was very, very impactful, and it certainly accomplished the mission.
Yeah.
This brings us to another question, number four, which is, listen, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your 19-year-old self as you were facing those decisions?
Oh my goodness. So first of all, I would say to her, you are okay just the way you are. You don't need your parents' approval. You don't need their what is it? Mainly their approval and acceptance and love. That loving yourself is the most important thing. And for you to truly individuate and become your own person, you don't have to be a mini daddy or a mini mommy. You don't have to push yourself and put all that pressure on yourself to be someone who you're not. I really wish I could have told her that she would be loved no matter what she did, or if she didn't do anything, for just being she was loved. That I didn't have to perform in any way, shape, or form. I think that's the advice I would give her, and to tell her that she is wise beyond her years, and to trust that intuition and to trust herself, because I really learned to trust others, external influences other than myself, Brad.
Well, it sounds like not only would that be good advice for yourself when you were 19, that would be good advice for all parents listening to talk to their 19-year-old,
Yeah.
and give them the same exact advice based on your experience and most likely their experience grow as we all grew up and we were 19. We look back and we try and help those that are coming up behind us. Now, there were a lot of influences, though, good and bad. And so now we ask ourselves, the question to you is define the influence you have now spiritually and through religion that is in your life now and how that's different from before.
Well, absolutely. There is a difference between spirituality and religion. And to me, right now, religion, anything that instills fear in you about God, creator, source, whatever, is not of God. So I do not participate in religion anymore, even though I appreciate some of the rituals around some religions. I do not want, I see Jesus as a way shower. I believe in Jesus. I love Jesus, but I don't believe that that's the only way to get to God, like I said earlier. So spirituality, my concept of God has evolved, and I challenge all of your audience to evolve with your concept of God and not just take what has been generationally handed to you that, go to church, this is the church we go to, and label yourself. Instead, what type of relationship do you really want from the Creator? What do you think that is about? And to evolve with that and not just take some one person or family's generational belief that this is the way we all believe, so therefore I've got to just fall in line with that. And I think spirit is, there is no beginning and no end to God, in my opinion. It's this universal, this intelligence, this being, this creativeness, this genius. And if I can say one thing about the other side, the main theme is it's love and oneness. It's all about love, and we're all one. And that's what I really hope we can get to as a world now, is understanding that we are all one consciousness and not let race and religion and sex and gender divide us and cause us to judge others, because when we're in judgment, we can't get to love and we'll never get to peace. But if we can remove the judgment, and that's something you can do today, is quit judging yourself, quit shaming yourself. And if you remove the judgment, then you have the capacity for love, and love will lead to peace.
Yes, that's interesting. Judging yourself, judging others, right? And to get to unconditional love, how can we do that in this physical form? Well, like we talked about earlier, we can sort of sense that from our pets. How can we try to make a practice out of that every day? Well, this next question is, when you speak, and you speak in your book about soul loss and soul retrieval, do you think certain parts of you still remain elsewhere and not yet integrated, or do you got it all back together?
That's a really good question. I will tell you, in my healing journey, I did do a soul retrieval by a shaman, and I needed to do that because there's 3 symptoms for soul loss. And all of you who have tried all these different healing modalities, please pay attention that the healing journey, it could be the soul is been fractured. And you don't want to be here is one of the symptoms. Well, I didn't want to come back, so I got that one down. A low level, consistent feeling that something is missing, okay? And for me, it's interesting that a lot of compulsive behaviors and addictions fall into this statement. And I can see the clear link between my compulsive eating for so many years and my feeling empty in life. And this is when I didn't have my memory back. So I was very empty. I was searching. I was lonely. I didn't get married till I was 40. I couldn't sustain a relationship. So, depression is a big one in that one of something is missing in your life. And the third one is you just cannot get over it. And this can manifest in like chronic illnesses and wasting illnesses. And seeing that I was stuck with a certain chronic health condition. So I had those parts that fractured when the trauma happened, brought back into me. And I will tell you, is there a part of me, has my soul completely returned? Yes, my soul has completely returned, is what my guide just told me. So it is now about continuing for me to evolve at higher vibrational levels by continuing to practice communicating with my guides and my angels and staying on my soul path, and to exhibit love and kindness, which I'm trying very hard right now in America to do, given the big divide that we're in and the chaos that we're in, and to hold up the light and know that I am a light worker, and to stay in that higher vibration. Does that help?
That helps. Did you just a minute ago check in with your spirit
Yes,
guide?
yes, I did. I had to.
Wait a minute.
I had to ask them if I was, if there was any part. That's a real good question. So I just did real quick, and they said, "No, you're
So
whole."
before we go any further, can you go into that a little bit more? Like, how did that happen? Did you just dial, 911, or is there a different number
Okay,
and close?
so since my memories come back, okay, so the first 20 years of my adulthood is I didn't have my memory. Now the last 20 has been an evolution of understanding that I can communicate with my angels. Like I said, we each have a guardian angel. I actually have two, and you can get their names. I have Seraphina and Victoria with me. And then I have a team of angels, but we also have spirit guides. Okay. And in my opinion, the guides are more focused on helping us with our soul path, to keep us on that path. That's what they're guiding us to do. So we can actually ask for guidance. And a great exercise is to journal and say, what does my soul want me to know? Okay. And then just let it flow from there and see what comes. And if nothing comes, don't give up. Keep trying day after day to see what your soul wants to tell you. And then I learned something called muscle testing. And so I can test to see if I'm congruent or incongruent in my body. But I am clair audio. There are 8 different clairs. This gets into a whole different thing, but you can hear your intuition. You can hear spirit. You can see spirit. You can, some people are more sensory exposed. They, or you can have combinations of them. Like I smelled the cigar. When you're smelling perfume or cigar, or smelling anything, and it's not in your presence, that is one of your deceased ancestors, your loved ones trying to get in touch with you. Okay, guides and angels don't have smells or senses. Smells is what I want to say. Smells associated with them. They're non-smelling. But your deceased loved ones have a certain smell with them. My grandfather was the only one who smoked cigars of all the relatives, okay? My mother wears a certain cologne. She hasn't passed yet, but if that cologne comes up to me, I will know that she's trying to get in touch with me on the other side. So when you're smelling something or a certain food that is evoking, oh, that's mother. She cooked that and it smelled the same way. That's a deceased loved one trying to get a hold of you. And if they don't go to you, they'll probably go to someone close to you that is open to communicating with the other realm, because they do want to communicate with us, and they do it through all kinds of ways. It can be lights blinking on and off, it's energy usually that or even seeing a coin on the ground, or seeing, they come to us in all different kinds of ways. Even songs on the radio, angels will come through that. But it's paying attention to these signs and paying attention to your intuition and learning to trust that your intuition is right, and asking for evidence. Where's that parking? Please, I asked for help with a parking space. They need to show you the evidence, and there's the parking space. That confirms to me they heard me and they saw me, because it happens in like a minute. I asked. And a lot of times I forget, and I'm going, okay, why is nothing happening? Oh, I got to remember to ask, So it really is something you have to get in the habit of doing, is having this relationship. But yeah, I just checked in. I just asked real quickly, okay, guys, is it? And then I got the answer. It was just like, you're solid, you don't there are no more fractures in you. You're whole. So you gave me a gift there by being able to ask myself. I never think to ask that about myself. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad we got the right answer. And by the way, next time you're talking to your spirit guides, if they could talk to my spirit guides, let them know, I'm available 24/7 for a conversation. So yeah, I look forward to that for sure. Now, the next question is, how can someone who hasn't had an NDE like you overcome their fear of death?
Very good question. So in my book, I have a checklist of things that maybe you're afraid of with death. And I think it's important, like, do you worry what's going to happen to you after death? Are you anxious about the way you're going to die? And I will tell you, when you die and it's something traumatic like a car crash that is sudden and impactful, I want people to know 99.9% there is no pain associated with that death. I still to this day, your soul flies out of your body before impact, so you never feel the pain of impact. And that's not just me that has said that. It is a lot of people that have been in, near-death situations that have had traumatic, unexpected, life-altering situations. So please know there's no pain attached to that. They're not suffering. On the other side, you're released of your body, and all pain and all suffering is just gone. There's not even there. So no pain. But some people may perceive that they're going to have pain, and they don't want to. They fear the pain. So I think it's actually drilling down. What is it that you're really afraid of about death? That you're not going to see your grandkids, that you're not going to have a legacy? I mean, what is it? Really try to hone that in. And then really like put it out in the light and really see it for what it is and see if it really is false evidence appearing real, which is fear, okay? Or is it your fear of what you believe with religion and who God is, and maybe you don't think you're going to go to heaven, that there's some things you've done, maybe you had an abortion or something you thought was so horrific that is not gonna, you don't want to, you never told anybody, and then you're scared it's not going to let you get into the gates of heaven or something like that, instead of understanding that all of our souls move on to the other side.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We have the this built-in attention to our self-preservation. If there's a bus coming down the road, we get out of the way. You
Right.
know, if for some reason we're underwater too long and we can't breathe, we know we got to get up. We got to get some air, and that those are things that are sort of kind of built into us. And the question is, are we afraid of the pain associated with death? Or are we afraid because we don't know when it's going to happen or where I'm going to end up on the other side? Or is it like turning a computer off? Everything just goes off and there is nothing else.
Right.
And if even if I believe there's something on the other side, is it that I'll be away from all those that I know and love? Then maybe there's many dimensions to that. Any thoughts there?
Oh, of course, those are all very valid human thoughts about death, and you just did a brilliant job of covering a lot of them. And I think for someone like me and the millions of other people who have had NDEs, we're consistent for the most part with the messaging that light, love, beauty, eternality is all on the other side. There really is nothing to fear, and that we do still connect with our loved ones here on earth, and you will see them when you transition along with your pets. So there's nothing in this case with death is going to happen. So we need to start planning and talking about it now and not wait till it happens to someone and then all of a sudden death will fracture so many families because somebody wants grandma's, or mother's china and she was supposed to leave it to me and she left it to someone else, or, not honoring what the person really wanted in terms of their death and planning it your way. I mean, this is one of the biggest issues with families now is dealing with the death of a loved one and what they perceive they wanted versus reality, and they didn't have it written down. They didn't do the will. They didn't do the living trust. All of these documents that really sets out what is their wishes. Please make it known to your family what it is that you want for your transition, because it is going to happen and it may be sooner than later.
Could it be the case that this pendulum could swing the other way? Also, that some people are looking forward to it. They go, "Cool, I'm done here, and I'm ready to go to the other side." Now, I'm not suggesting they accelerate the process themselves, but the fact is they literally not only don't have any fear, they just don't have any reservations about it either. And they're life can be what life is, and whatever comes to me, I'll enjoy it. And when I go, and it's going to be great.
Absolutely. And I think those people are really clear their purpose on life and that they fulfilled their purpose. They fulfilled their lessons. They're really, all of our souls come in at different levels. We don't all come in at the same level. Some of us are more evolved from a soul perspective than others. Some of us are babies, and that's why you can look at a baby and go, oh, it's an old soul, versus the Gerber baby that just is so cute and chunky. And that's a newer soul coming in. But there's a reason we say that term, and oh, you look like an old soul, because it has been here many times, and it's wanting to learn this lesson this time so it doesn't have to come back in again and learn this particular one. So yeah, there are people that are at both extremes of that. But I will tell you, the more evolved souls are the ones that fear it less and that resist it less, because they know at some point they get the deja vu. They know that they've lived a past life, and they can feel and connect to these deja vu elements at different times in their life.
Right. And if you got that kind of figured out, like, I'm not afraid of death anymore, then you come back to this question, which is, you were given the message, don't be afraid of death. And you may have accomplished that. But what, if anything, are you still afraid of in life?
Okay, so I will tell you, I've had chronic health issues since the crash, okay, various issues. And I still fear being in pain, nonstop pain. I've had a lot of pain in my life, and today, knock on wood, I am pain free or got it dialed down. And I really do fear a life where I would be or lose my mobility or functionability of brain or body. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to walk. They didn't think I could walk again. And I had gangrene, I have sepsis. So, I've been through so much, and I'm so grateful that my body has been able to heal itself and to be as resilient as it has. And I think I would really fear, being bedridden and being in pain and being bedridden. That is not a quality of life that I want. And I've actually made that known to my husband. I don't want to just lay in a bed the rest of my life and be in pain. So those honestly are the two things that I fear. I want a good quality of life up until I'm ready to go again for the last time in this incarnation.
Oh, that makes tons of sense. Yeah. We could feel pain, but there's no joy and lengthy suffering
Right.
associated with these things. So, the last question really goes right in with this, which is, when you think about your final transition from this world, your real deathless moment, what is one thing you hope surprises you about that experience?
Wow, that's a really good question.
Now, think about this. At that point, your mom and your dad may have already
Yeah,
gone to the other side. So,
that is God. I was reading you. Yeah, that is exactly where I was going. Is that my whole relationship with my parents, what it was here, it's erased, because I'm with them in their spiritual true nature, and all of us at our soul essence. We all get spiritual amnesia when we come into this world. We forget who we are at the spiritual level, the soul level, which is we're perfect, we're radiant, we're glorious, we're beautiful, we're love, we're eternal. To connect with them at that pure essence of who they really are is going to be such beauty for me, because that's what I had hoped the last, especially 40 years of my life, I've been trying to get. I have not got it. So I will be so overjoyed to have no memory of this and to just be in love with them. And they're the same with me, like it never happened. Does that make sense?
totally, they would have each had their full life review.
Yeah.
They would have gotten the full value out of this entire experience that they had here. They would have known their role in it, with their parents as well as their children,
Right.
and their friends and so forth. They would understand that, and then you would be meeting them in a whole new, different place, and you would reflect back on why all of you had that experience together. It was for each of you to grow in the way that you did. So yeah, I'm glad I put that question there, and I'm glad it took you to that space to think that through. So I tell you, we do want folks for sure to go and get the book, and then I definitely want everyone to go and watch the movie when it comes out, because it'll definitely be a movie. But we should wrap up a couple loose ends for them,
Okay.
right? Because there's a second NDE, and then there was an experience you found out about the night that you were in the bar and how it was that you ended up in that car, and talk about trauma and years of grief. Oh my goodness! So feel free.
Okay, so as I was putting the book to press, I started writing the epilogue, and I got together with my three former roommates at the Air Force Academy. I put together a Zoom call, and two of them I had stayed in touch with all these years. The third one was my actual roommate, and unbeknownst to me, I did not realize she had quit the academy the Christmas of our sophomore year. And I found her on Facebook and I invited her on a Zoom to reconnect. This is, mind you guys, 36 years afterwards, okay? I'd not seen her, not talked to her, didn't know anything about what happened. I just know she left. And so I found out, we got together on the Zoom call, and she told me, Nicole, the reason I quit the academy was because I felt so guilty about what happened that night. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, don't you remember? She said, we had an agreement that we were going to both go back in the same car that night from the squadron event. And when you came over to say, okay, can I ride, can I hop in the car with you? And she said, no, I'm going to drive this senior's car back because he's drunk and I really like him and I really want to just be alone with him. And she said, Nicole, there's one guy left over there. Just go get in the car with him and go have some fun, and I'll meet you back at the academy. You'll be fine. And she never did. And so she couldn't live with herself for saying, no, I'm not going to give you a ride. Because she said, if I would have just done what we agreed to and given you a ride back, none of this would have ever happened. And so she quit. She went to Vermont and she has still never married. And she it works up in the mountains for the State Department doing wastewater treatment and things like that. And I felt so sad about this because that part of my memory never came back. I did not remember to that agreement we had made. And it now made me remember, I actually did remember saying to her, oh, he's been drinking. And she said, oh, they've all been drinking, Nicole. So don't worry about that. You're going to be fine. And she didn't know, and I didn't know at the time, that this guy was an alcoholic. And his dad was a three-star general in the Army Corps of Engineers at the time. And once again, this was a situation for me where rank has its privileges, and this particular cadet was allowed to stay at the academy because of who his dad was. And the state of Colorado did press charges, and he did plead guilty, but he still was allowed to get a commission into the U.S. Air Force. Any other cadet would have been kicked out on honor violations along with other things as a result of this. So it was just how important it is that we really communicate the truth of what happens around things so that we all can be on the same page, because I never knew that we had that agreement. I had made plans. I had done the right thing. And when I told this to my dad just a couple years ago, I did reach out to him and tell him this, Brad. He told me, well, you should have walked back. Now, there are no cell phones in 1982. This is pitch black at 7:30 in a Black Forest park, and I'm supposed to walk back to the Air Force Academy. I mean, but
There's no Uber at that
there's
time.
no Uber, okay? You guys, I mean, I didn't even know where I was. I had no map, no. So, of course, that's crazy, but that's his way of still rationalizing what he said and what he did. But it really made me sad that she carried that guilt around for all these years, and she had no idea. She thought I was angry at her. She said, I thought you were just angry at me, and I just left.
With your conversation with her, was she ultimately able to forgive herself?
She said she's working on it still, and that this helped her, and she was very glad that I reached out and was able to have this dialogue with all four of us. And she just reiterated again how sorry she was, because she really felt like she was responsible. So I think I'm responsible. She thinks she's responsible. And the guy that drove the car didn't think he was responsible. He was drunk. And, but
And you know what I like is when your sister came to visit you, she found him in his hospital room and gave him a tongue
yes,
lashing,
she
right?
did. Yes, she did.
Good for her. Exactly. So, that part of the story doesn't come up much about what happened to him afterward. And it's kind of a footnote.
Yeah.
But so thanks for clearing that in up too. So what about the second NDE? Did you want to share that?
Sure. So this was 2 weeks after the car crash. I was in ICU for 7 weeks. I was up and down and up and down. And at that point, I had 3 infections that were in me. And I was just becoming more bloated and toxic. I developed sepsis, like I said, and gangrene. So they went in to operate and they lost me on the table. They didn't put me totally under because they knew I was so sick. And so the surgeon who was with me was the first female surgeon in the state of Colorado. She was the first woman medical student at Jefferson College in Virginia. She was a maverick, and her specialty was thoracic surgery. And they lost me on the table. And so my heart just stopped. And she called time of death. They called code blue. They called time of death. Then the surgical nurse ran to the chapel, which is where my parents were for all these surgeries. And I said, Nicole, we lost her on the table. And Mom said, I heard the code blue. I knew it was Nicole. And so for the first time in my mother's life, she saw my father cry, and they said, you need to start making funeral arrangements. What do you want us to do? And she refused, my mother refused to believe that I was dead. And then a couple of minutes later, another surgical nurse comes in and says, her heart just started back. Dr. Rothammer is going to have her in recovery soon. And my mother just was like, wow, I knew she wasn't dead. So, it is one of these things that you cannot explain it away. Medical science can't explain it away. It is a divine intervention that it was really me leaving again. And I later remember I left my body. I was starting to go back toward the light again. And my angel came back in and put me right back into that body, put my soul back into my body. My soul had left, and that's why they couldn't get any vitals, and that's why they called time of death on me. So I really was having serious problems staying in my body because at that point I was in so much pain. At one point I had 10 IVs hooked up to me. Okay. I'd have a subclavian. I was a very sick person. I've broken my pelvis on both sides. I couldn't move. And it was just, I had to have a respirator after that operation. So this machine breathing for me, that was the worst period of my life to have a machine breathe for me. And today I still struggle with anything like scuba diving where my airflow could be potentially cut off. I don't necessarily fear it. I just don't do anything that's going to put me in that situation, but I just don't, I need air. Let me put it that way. I don't like being in confined elevators or in big crowds. I need air and I need space. And that's a direct result of not being able to breathe.
Well, now that you have gone through the NDE, the 2 NDEs, and 19 years of, working on things you thought were associated with it, trauma, the eating disorder, and then shifting gears and now really focusing on the NDE itself and your connection to spirituality. And it feels like it's common that folks come back from an NDE and they're more clairaudient, and various other things. So it does sound like those skills have heightened for you. How would you describe that?
Absolutely. And it's not only my connection to the spiritual realm that's heightened, it is sensitivities like music. I cannot handle very loud music. I can't handle crowds. I can't handle toxins like alcohol, smoke. I can't be around any of that. So I have a lot of limitations to keep my vibration higher and to keep me centered and grounded. I just cannot be in. I know now for me what situations actually cause issues and cause me to get sick, and then things that actually help raise my vibration and help me to be able to continue to have direct contact with the spiritual realm. But yeah, it's like a muscle. You have to exercise it and you have to keep at it to keep that relationship going and to keep yourself grounded and centered and do the boundary setting, do the clearing your energy, clearing other people's emotions. Because I'm an empath now. I'm very sensitive to other people's energies as well. And any energy where there's what they call vampires that'll kind of glob onto you and want to take your energy from you. So that's why I've had to really scale back in a lot of the work that I've done with professionally with people one on one, because I can't take on, I have to really be careful not to take on their energy, especially if they won't own it and be responsible for it.
And like you mentioned earlier, like narcissists, will clearly do that. And if you get alone with them over time, they will completely suck your energy in and make it all your fault and so on. And that, if being an empath, you could get injured by that pretty severely.
Absolutely. And it definitely causes physical problems. You get depleted, then you kind of wind up with a lot of autoimmune disorders, is what a lot of empaths come down with.
Physical, yes, ramifications. So, how would you summarize? Because this is why I know it's going to be a movie, right? Because there's so many plot twists and turns and character development, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, and I was surprised here, and 19 years later, there. How would you summarize the real, take-home benefits? Maybe even the homework assignment for folks that are still watching right now, into a little package.
Well, first and foremost, the theme to take away about what's on the other side is love and oneness. Okay? This has been reiterated through the ages. It's not just me coming up with this. This has been Gandhi, this has been Buddha, this has been Jesus, all of this. And so this is where you have to love yourself first and foremost, and then to expand your heart and expand your consciousness and become aware how everything that you are thinking, saying, and doing has an impact in this world, and to be mindful of that. So that is on you, and it is time for all of us to quit being in our cocoon of a caterpillar, and it's time for us to open up our wings of being a butterfly and to start flying and to own what is ours to own and become the being that you were born to be, not who someone else told you to be, to start owning it and start living it and let go of what the heck other people think.
Yeah, if you believe you're an eternal soul, a spirit, whatever it might be, and there is no end to it, then why would you have any hesitations in this life? Why are you being safe or guarded or not really living life to its full potential? And I know it's easy to say, but if you kind of spend some time on that, meditate on that, and then experiment with the notion of kind of letting yourself go and finding more joy in life, what's the downside, right?
Yeah, and to live forever right now. Don't put this off till you retire or till you get X number of accomplishments done or whatever. Because here's the deal, we don't know. We have many opportunities to exit this life. It's not just one exit point in our life. There's several opportunities where we could choose to exit if we wanted, but only you can decide when you are truly ready to exit. And this is something that we have to honor with everybody in our family and our friends. When they are ready to exit, we have to honor that and not make it about us and think that, oh, I need you to stay here for me because I need this reassurance or needing to know. I just can't bear to think that you're not going to be here in the physical form. So we need to respect that with everyone and to honor that within ourselves and to live today. If I never talk to you again, Brad, how do you want to leave this interaction? Do you want to leave it where you're angry and you're yelling at someone or whatever? Or do you want to leave it at a more higher, loving, kinder place? Because you don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow. I mean, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Something may happen tonight, or, you just never know. I certainly didn't think I was going to die at 19 years old. The kids that go to school and get massacred by some person, none of us clearly thought that morning when you sent them off to school that they weren't going to come home. So you need to be mindful and live with the intention, top of mind every day, that you may not see this person again, and to be and show and to live love.
Yes, I love that. That's a great wrap up right there. I only have one more question for you. And what actress would you like to play you in the movie?
Oh, that is a really good one. God, oh my God, Brad. What actress? Let me think here.
Scarlett Johansson.
Um, I'm thinking for some reason, Okay, let me ask my guides here.
Oh, cool.
Naomi Watts.
All righty. Well, then that's what it's going to be. If the guides told you that, who am I to question?
Yeah,
Wow.
she's a really she really gets into her roles. I've seen her in so many things, and she has such a great depth and broad range, and she really does embody the character. That she really gets into it, and she's authentic. She's a believable character, and whoever plays it has got to be authentic. I was going to go with Nicole Kidman because she has the same NK initials I do, and Nicole Kerr, Nicole Kidman, but she doesn't have the vibration I was looking for some reason.
And vibration is key.
Yeah.
It's most important, actually, when doing that selection. Good. Naomi Watts, it is. I when your spirit guides got involved, then I was pretty sure it's actually going to be a movie now.
Yeah,
So
well,
congratulations.
thank you. Well, Brad, you put it out there to the universe, so I'm looking for somebody who wants to take it on now. That's the next step. I've been in a pause part of my life now. Like, what's the next chapter of this? What's the next evolution? And maybe that's what it is. You've been put in my life for a reason.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, thanks for sharing. I love this story, as you can tell, over and over and over. I said that, and I really appreciate your time in telling the story so well and in such depth today. It's going to help so many people as they see this. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Brad. Namaste.
Namaste. Well, and thank you for joining us for this amazing story. If you found the conversation enlightening, be sure to like and subscribe and share. And as always, keep questioning, keep exploring, and go beyond the illusion to discover your true self. Thank you, everyone, and bye for now. Da, 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 da.
Oh, you're
Thank you, thank you,
such
thank
a
you.
great host. Thank you for such great questions. I think of all the podcasts I've done, and I've done a lot, you really researched it. You had excellent questions, and you were just there. So, wow, saving the best for last.